Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Andrew, also known as Ian Android, and I love to talk about movies and TV shows way too much. With that being said, join me down in the comments below because in today's video, I'm going to be ranking all the Fox X-Men movies from the worst to the best, and I would love to see your guys' rankings in the comments down below. So let's get into it. In 19th place, I have Dark Phoenix. Why in the world would Fox make this movie? The Phoenix storyline is poorly and more poorly than the Phoenix story in The Last Stand, which I will get to later in this video. The characters are written poorly, the action sequences are mid at best, and they literally have Mystique being a good guy, which she works way better as a villain. The movie is so bad that I'm just gonna give it a rating out of 1 out of 10. Do not see this movie, and if you must, I feel sorry for you. In 18th place, I have Elektra. There's only really one thing to say about this movie. Trash. That's it. I rate it like a 1 out of 10. In 17th place, I have The New Mutants. The only good thing about this movie is that Charlie Heaton from Stranger Things is in it. That's it. The only thing that is special about this movie, so that's why I give it like a 1 out of 10 as well. In 16th place, I have the Fantastic movie from 2015. This movie is unbelievably bad. The actress that plays Sue Storm, Kate Maria, literally didn't even see the movie because of all the bad criticism it had gotten. I will say, though, that the acting was spot on in this movie, coming from Michael B. Jordan to Kate Maria. The movie special effects suck. It's worse than the Flash movie CGI, and that is saying a lot. It is straight doggy doo-doo. The actor who played Doctor Doom is a good actor, but he could not pull off playing Doom well. I'd rather lick the bathroom floor than watch his performance as Doctor Doom again. And I really hope Robert Downey Jr. will give us a better performance as Doom. I rate this a little higher than Elektra in New Mutants and Dark Phoenix, just because of the comedy worked pretty well, which is why I give it a rating of 2.5 out of 10. In 15th place, I have Wolverine 2013. This movie is good in my opinion, but the second act of this movie just falls downhill. You have Wolverine fighting a giant robot for no reason, and at the end of the movie, in a deleted scene, it teases Hugh Jackman wearing the cowl, but it never goes anywhere until the best movie in the world, which I will come up in my list later on. And that movie, but this movie, I would rate 3 out of 10. In 14th place, I have X2 United. I'm just gonna say it. This is the worst original X-Men movie in the trilogy. This movie is so forgettable that I literally have trouble talking about it in this entry. The only thing I actually remember about this movie is that Magneto escaping from prison. That's it. Since I can't remember anything about it, I rate it like a 3 out of 10. In 13th place, I have X-Men Apocalypse. This, to me, is probably the worst out of the young X-Men trilogy. The desert seats do not really fit for me. You get a really great villain, Apocalypse, and he just gets wasted in this movie. They don't put any pizzazz or show anything interesting about him. He's just a bland villain, in my opinion. Say what you want about this movie, though, but this has the best Quicksilver scene out of any X-Men movie when he's rescuing everybody from the X-Men mission when it blows up and we're listening to the song Sweet Dreams. But other than that, that just because that one scene is in that movie, I rate this movie a 4 out of 10. In 12th place, I have X-Men First Class. I'm going to be real with you guys. While I was making this script, I was getting in together all the X-Men movies, and I totally forgot that Fox made this movie, which shows how forgettable it is in my mind. That's why it's in 12th place, but on a rewatch, it will probably be higher. The only real thing I remember about this movie is that Magneto paralyzes Professor X. Plus, I do remember that you get introduced to mutant who can adapt to anything to survive. But literally, like 20 minutes of introducing him, they basically kill him off just to make it look like the villain is super strong and I propose as a big threat. And I love how they choose Kevin Bacon for this, which is why I rate it a 4.3 out of 10. In 11th place, I have Deadpool 1. Maybe a controversial take, but hey, that's what this channel is all about. I'm sorry, not sorry. This is a good movie for what it was for the first highest grossing R-rated movie at the time, but it's kind of a mess. The storyline is a mess because of how he had cancer and went through the super soldier serum treatment really early. And that's because he ditched his girlfriend who supported him and every inch of the way. Their relationship is probably the best thing about this movie. The comedy is also fantastic in this movie. And I love how he jokes about Wolverine a lot in this movie. I love how he joked about how the studio can't afford any of the X-Men in this movie other than Colossus, Negasonic, Teenage Warhead. So other than that, I rate this movie a 5 out of 10. In 10th place, I have the original X-Men movie. This movie literally sets up the record for the future Marvel movies. If this movie didn't happen, we would not have the Spider-Man Raimi trilogy. But I will say it does have its problems. We literally get one of the most powerful mutants to date, but he literally has to be saved by Storm and Cyclops because Sabretooth attacks him. And I do think that the plot twist that Magneto needed Wolverine's powers, but instead we got what he was really after was Rogue's power. But okay, I will say that Cyclops is wasted in all these X-Men movies, which I kind of hate because they all play every actor who played Cyclops was great actors, but they literally get sidelined throughout the entire X-Men movies, which is why I give this movie a 5 out of 10 because nowadays Cyclops is finally getting the recognition that he deserves. In ninth place, I have X-Men The Last Stand. To me, this is the best X-Men movie in the original trilogy. Hot take, don't murder me for that one. Say what you want about this movie. I know it has its problems, but the best thing in this movie is honestly Dark Phoenix stuff. I think it's good. I kind of think it's handled very well. And problem I really have with this movie is that Sharon Tatum was supposed to play Gambit in this movie, but due to contract reasons, he couldn't. And that kind of makes me mad because he's been trying to play Gambit for years, but he finally got his time to shine in a movie that I will get to later. And it's best casting other than Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. But I gotta say, plot was amazing in this movie. The storyline on how there's a cure for mutants and how there's a rebellion for people who don't want to take it. And I think that they didn't have the guts to kill off Cyclops. That kind of shocked me. Also, Professor X, I did not expect them. They had the guts to do that in the third installment of the X-Men movie at the time. But the action sequences are phenomenal in this movie. And I love how Iceman and Pyro are best friends to enemies. And Pyro turns to the dark side with Magneto. And they had their fight. And I finally answered my question, who would win in a fight, ice or fire? And Ice won, which is why I ranked this movie a 5.5. Out of 10. In eighth place, I have X-Men Origins Wolverine. I'm not going to talk about this movie too much because I already talked about it in my previous video. Link in the description. Go check it out. But his movie is actually fine. Good storyline, good character development, and no one was wasted in this movie except for Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, which is why I rank it a 6 out of 10. In seventh place, I have Fantastic Four 2005. This movie holds a very special place in my heart, and I will tell you why. Because yes, this movie isn't great, but I do think it's better than Fan Four Stick, and I do think Chris Evans does a better job at Johnny Storm than Captain America. That is very hot take, and I'm probably going to get murdered for that. But the reason why this movie holds a very special place in my heart is because this is what got me into superhero movies and the genre in general, and what made me a fan that I am today. As for the movie itself, the plot is literally a mess, and I thought Julian Muslin that played a menacing Dr. Doom, so I thought that part was good. And I thought at one point in the movie he was gonna kill Mr. Fantastic. Another reason why this movie is good is because Chris Evans plays Johnny Storm, the lovable, goofball, immature man child. And I will admit, I bet everyone you knows a Johnny Storm in their life. And we all know that one person who would just be Johnny Storm in the Journey Engine. With that being said, I rate this movie good 6.5 out of 10. In sixth place, I have Days of Future Past. In my opinion, this is hands down the best X-Men movie in the Young X-Men trilogy. When I first watched these movies for the first time, I had no idea how they were gonna pull it off with old mutants and mutants coming together side by side. But when I was watching them in chronological order, I had no idea at what point in time I should watch it in. But this movie is awesome. It introduces us to the best mutant in any X-Men movie. In my opinion, Peter Evans as Quicksilver. The only thing I don't really like about this movie is how they give Professor X his legs back and Magneto trying to kill Mystique even though he's in love with her, which is why I rate this movie a 7 out of 10. In fifth place, I have Deadpool 2. This is hands down the best in Deadpool movie out of the three Deadpool movies. The characters are also in so phenomenally. My favorite character is Brad Pitt as the Vanisher, and I think him being invisible throughout the entire movie is the best joke in the movie. Because, in my opinion, Brad Pitt is one of the worst actors in the world. Hot take. I will get beat up for that. I also didn't like how they killed Vanessa in the movie because in the first 15 minutes, she wasn't really doing anything except coming home to Wade Wilson Deadpool. And I thought Ryan played a fantastic Juggernaut. To me, the X-Force was one of the highlights in this movie, other than the end where Deadpool went back in time and unalived himself in the X-Men Origins Wolverine and then killed himself as Ryan Reynolds and stopped him playing Green Lantern from ever being made. I thought that was the best joke other than Brad Pitt as Vanisher. I also thought Josh Brolin played a better villain as Cable than Thanos in this movie. And that is a hot take. Probably my biggest hot take that I have, which is why I rate this movie a 7.5 out of 10. In fourth place, I have Daredevil 2003. I have one word to describe this movie. Underrated as hell. This movie has a stack of actors and actresses from Ben Affleck as Daredevil to Jon Favreau as Freddie Nelson. In my opinion, hot take, but Ben Affleck does a better job as Daredevil than Charlie Cox, but I will say Charlie Cox TV show is better than the Daredevil movie. If you want me to explain, I will make it a long video, so post it in the comments below if you want to see that. But I rate this movie like 8 out of 10. In third place, I have Rise of the Silver Surfer. I think this movie is severely underrated. I will admit that it has its problems, like the plot is a little messy, and I didn't like how they brought back Victor as Doom. I did like how they made Johnny aware of his actions when he was trying to be careful when he was trying not to switch powers with the team members. But my favorite scene in this movie is at the end when they are against all the odds. Johnny takes every power that everybody had and uses it to defeat Galactus and Doom. But all in all, if you watch this movie, just to watch this movie, you will have a blast. The only big complaint I really have about this movie is that they handled Galactus very poorly. Like, they didn't make him like this big giant monster, like a celestial type thing. They made him like a scary thunderstorm cloud. And that is why it is not second place. But I do think it's a really good movie. And I will give this movie like an 8.5 out of 10. In second place, I have Logan. Logan. This movie, other than Deadpool movies, is the best rated R movie in the world. With that being said, I think this movie does a phenomenal job to the end of Logan's story arc. I just hope that the Deadpool Wolverine movie doesn't ruin the great ending we had in this movie. You get Wolverine in this movie, who is an old, wrinkly old man because the adamantium inside of him is killing him. And also, he finds out that he has a daughter named Laura, also known as XX. And even though they aren't together that long, the emotional impact that they had on each other was awesome. Even the short amount that time that they had together, they just broke me. Like, they broke me. The only downside I will say about this movie is that the villain isn't memorable, and I forget what his main intention for in this movie. The movie for me personally is a 9.5 out of 10. This movie would be first if it wasn't for the next movie coming up on my list. And that movie I'm talking about is Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm just gonna say, let's freaking go. This movie, in my opinion, is the best piece of Marvel content we have gotten, not just since Endgame, but since Civil War. The cameos hit hard in this movie, the fight scenes were phenomenal, and my favorite scene in this movie, that is everybody's favorite scene in this movie, is when Deadpool is waving around Logan's dead corpse while singing to the song Bye 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 and fighting the TVA agents. The Deadpool variants coming out of the Doctor Strange portal in the fight scene was amazing. The jokes that they took at Disney and even the jokes about Hugh Jackman's divorce that happened last year was off charts, dude. Like this movie had me laughing to the point where I like fell out of my seat. The only complaint I really had about this movie is that during the montage where he's trying to find a Wolverine to help save him, and he finds a Wolverine that fights the Hulk, we don't get to see that because they don't want to or whatever. But I wanted to see the Deadpool Hulk fight in this movie, and I was very disappointed that we didn't get to see it. Other than that, I don't really have any complaints. My favorite cameo in this movie is Chris Evans as the Human Torch and Channing Tatum as Gambit. I did think the villain was a little bland and not the most memorable, and her intentions and motive was good, but she wasn't a very good villain in my opinion. But other than that, go see this movie. If you love Hugh Jackman and you love Ryan Reynolds, then this is the movie for you. And my favorite line in this movie is Wesley Snipes as Blade, and he says, "There's only one Blade. Will only ever be one Blade." That had me cracking up. And I just want to say one last thing. Let's freaking go. 10 out of 10 movie.